Attention, I'd like to thank everyone for coming tonight. This is the 2004 Stockton Mayoral Debate, sponsored by the Pipeline Club here at San Joaquin Delta College. What I wanted to say is a little introduction on Pipeline. We just started about a semester ago. Pipeline's a nonpartisan club which is based on community service and community activism through politics. We also focus on national, state, and local levels as we're doing today. Tonight's a very special night because we're going to hear from the candidates who want to run for mayor, they are running for mayor. They want the office of mayor. And as we know, Stockton's going to be facing many changes in the next 4 years. And we're going to want someone with integrity, enough integrity, dedication, and political resolve to handle any issues that come up in the next 4 years. And this forum is really important because it gives the community an opportunity to find out exactly the views on our mayoral candidates. So that being said, I'm going to hand it over to Edward Chavez, who's going to give us an introduction to himself and why he wants to run for mayor.
Thank you, Brian. Good evening. As many of you know, I was born and raised in Stockton and spent the last 30 plus years in the police department, retiring as chief of police October 31st. During that time, I certainly developed a sense for the issues cutting across our community, not only the issues in downtown, but throughout the various neighborhoods and communities. Under the very capable direction of the council, Stockton has been headed in a very positive direction, particularly as it pertains to the revitalization of downtown. I want to continue that work of revitalizing downtown. I am pleased to have the support of the mayor, but also Senator Mike Machado and Patrick Johnson. The hallmark of my service as mayor will focus in on three things: community safety, neighborhood revitalization, and economic development. Community safety from the perspective that we have a lot to do to provide for the safety and security of our residents. It should also involve ensuring that our young people stay in school, providing tutoring programs for them, and helping keeping them out of trouble. Those who support growth must also commit, and I say must commit, to focusing in and revitalizing our existing neighborhoods, whether that's providing housing on vacant lots, rehabilitating our older homes, or providing urban-style homes and commercial development in our downtown area. You know, Stockton will grow and prosper if we can earn and spend our money locally and have a job market that provides for higher-paying salaries. We must provide our young people a variety of employment opportunities, housing choices, and one of the things that we've lacked for a long time is appropriate recreational and entertainment venues. We need to focus in on our young people. As I mentioned, Stockton is on a very positive path. We're developing an exciting downtown. We need to work on existing neighborhoods to make it vibrant and part of our overall community. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chavez. Mrs. Johnson?
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. I'm happy to be here this evening. I'm very proud of the progress that Stockton has made over the last 10 years because I've been part of that progress as a member of the Stockton City Council. Because of the efforts of the Stockton Council, we've changed the face of downtown. We have Weber Point and DeCarly Square and the new Cineplex. We have literally remade portions of the downtown. We've cleaned up graffiti in our neighborhoods, and we have cleaned up a lot of the ugly eyesores that have blighted our community over those years. We've invested in after-school programs because we believe in our young people. Stockton was named an All-America City in 1999 for our efforts to solve our community's problems. Now, we've made progress, but we have a long way to go. We need to prevent crime in all areas of our city, not just the 10 blocks that surround our new Cineplex. We must reconnect with our neighborhoods and our ethnic groups to enable them to help us in crime prevention. We must beef up our after-school programs so that our young people get not only recreational opportunities, but individualized tutoring so that they can do well in school and prosper. We must create the new jobs in this community, jobs that support families. In doing that, we should be supporting local business, because small business in this community is the bedrock of our economic survival. We should be growing jobs internally within the city. As small business prospers, new jobs are created, and we all gain from that economically. Plus, we need those jobs to keep our kids here in Stockton. You in the audience, we want you to get an education and stay here and help this community get better. We must partner with our local school districts and businesses to promote and raise the educational level of both students and adults. Every child and every adult in this community should be able to read. Literacy should be a citywide effort, and we should get on board with the schools and businesses to make sure that each child and each adult has that opportunity and learns the very basics of reading. Of course, we must continue downtown redevelopment and focusing on the center of Stockton, but most importantly, we must focus on the waterfront. We must create another river walk, like the famous river walk in San Antonio, Texas. We must allow development on the north and south shores, business, entertainment, buildings, restaurants, all of the things that will provide economic growth for the downtown area and make the water a magnet for tourism from both residents and outsiders alike. We must also lead the county in a regional growth plan that decides where and how we're going to grow. Because if we don't do that, we're going to be another poster child for urban sprawl, and none of us want that. We must open the doors of City Hall to all the citizens. We must provide information freely, not only to the public, but to the council members who request information. It's so important that your tax dollars are accounted for, that the priorities of the council are the priorities of the public, and that you have access to all the information that you need to understand where the priorities are in the city of Stockton. As mayor, I will work very hard to achieve these goals. Working together, we will make Stockton an all-America city for all its residents. Thank you.
Now we're going to go over to the format of tonight's debate. What we're going to do is we have a panelist of 3 different representatives from the media, The Record, La Voz, and Connections. What we're going to do is turn the floor over to one of the panelists. They're going to ask a set of questions, 2 questions. The person the question is directed to is going to have a 2-minute response time. After that, I'm going to direct another candidate, and they will have a 1-minute response time. We will go until time permits. So, now I'm going to turn the mic over to Kevin Parrish of The Record for our first set of questions.
Well, the first question is for Ed. Stockton's in the midst of a general plan update. How do you think, and how would you like to see, how do you think it's going, and how would you like to see the city grow? Particularly asking about community separators or green belts.
Well, I totally support the notion that we must have community separators, green belts, urban growth boundaries. We do not want to be known as Stockton, Lodi. We should have our each individual communities. Now, in terms of how the general plan process is going, I have attended some of the meetings. One of the concerns that I hear repeatedly, and this is not just from one group, but it's from a variety of folks, that there is not enough participation allowed in terms of the process. And certainly if we're going to have a viable, long-term strategic process, we need to have input from all the factions, all the groups, all the concerns that are out there in our community. So I would certainly endorse the fact that that process needs to be open, it needs to be inclusive. Now let me get back to the notion of the community separators. Again, I support the notion that we must have community separators. We should have ag land boundaries separating our communities. The question that begs to be answered then is, how are those going to be provided and how are those going to be paid for? And there are a variety of answers to that question. But again, as we look towards Stockton and its growth, having those community separators in mind, we must have smart managed growth so that we ensure that we have the services needed for that growth, we have the infrastructure in place so that it's not just growth for the sake of growth, but that it's managed well.
Thank you, Mr.
Out of the general plan process planning. And it's important that we go back and allow them to have the input to determine what this community should look like in the future. And the general plan should be the blueprint for our growth and development, and it should include infill areas, it should include affordable housing, it should provide for separators between our communities, it should allow us to grow up and not just out, and it should provide for this blueprint with the financial pieces attached to it. It's important, though, that the public be involved in it. They are not involved today, and that's a shame because they're the most important people in the whole process.
Thank you, Ann. Kevin Parrish, your second question.
Wait.
Yes.
You can come back to this way.
Okay, my second question would be for Ann. Would you explain or maybe try to define the management style of City Manager Mark Lewis?
Define the management style. Well, Mark Lewis, as I know him, works very hard to follow the council's direction and the mayor's direction. And his management style is that of taking charge and making things happen. In my opinion, not always in the best interests of the community. It's important that the council give better direction, in my opinion, that they provide greater leadership to him in terms of what he does. But basically, he follows the direction of the council, and therefore the council and the mayor are responsible for his actions and actually are where the buck stops.
Thank you, Ann. Ed Chavez, your response?
Well, Mr. Lewis is certainly goal-oriented. He's focused in the tasks that he's given to follow. I will tell you that as a department head working with Mr. Lewis, that he does practice some participatory management practices in allowing his department heads to get very involved in the budget matters and a lot of other policies to be followed through the department. And I agree with Ann that a city manager, in this case Mr. Lewis, gets his direction from the mayor and the council. And if the manager is or is not abiding by what the council wishes, there are alternatives that they can take.
Thank you, Mr. Chavez. Now we're going to go to Roberto Rodrigan of La Voz.
My first question is for Ed. It is a well-known fact that Gary Podesta was the one who asked you to run for this race. I would like to know, how are you going to be your own man? How do you differentiate yourself from being just the continuation of the status quo?
Mayor Podesta approached me about 3 years ago to consider running for mayor. At that time, I told him I was not interested in any way. As I got closer to retirement, Gary Podesta and others, and I should underline several others, approached me and asked me to consider running for mayor. At that time, I indicated that I would give it a lot of thought, and if I felt it was the right thing to do for me personally and the right thing for me to do for the community, I would consider it. After giving a lot of deliberation, I decided I would enter the race for mayor. Now, for those of you who may know me, I am used to being in a leadership position. I do not ask permission to go to the bathroom. Okay? I don't need to get direction from Mayor Podesto when I am mayor of the city of Stockton. And what I've mentioned to other groups, I will put it in very plain language. I am nobody's boy.
Ann, would you like to have a response to that? To Mr. Chavez's comments?
Well, the mayor didn't ask me to run for mayor. I am far too independent and far too outspoken for that. That's all I'll say.
Thank you, Ann. Roberto, your next question.
Okay, get ready. You have said in previous occasions that you plan to do a lot of things. We all know that the budget's getting a very nice hit thanks to our states of states. Therefore, there's going to be some tough decisions to be made in the council and the city. You can't possibly comply with everything. So when you are faced with protecting jobs, that means the jobs for these families, versus to have programs. How are you going to face that?
My question?
Yes.
Well, remember, programs are jobs. They represent working people. And my philosophy always has been layoffs are the very last thing you do. And in my experience as a school board member and as a council member, there were no layoffs. Positions happened to go vacant because of a variety of reasons, and they were left vacant, but there were no layoffs. I don't believe in taking it out on working families. I believe it's more important to find cuts in other areas and make sure that we retain the jobs, because that's the most important function that we can do as an employer within this city. So I would look to other sources of income to protect the programs that we're offering and continue the kind of service that the citizens of Stockton expect and are used to.
Thank you, Ann. Mr. Chavez, your response?
You know, in difficult budget times, the council or any other governing body must prioritize the services they can provide to their constituents. Certainly public safety is very important. There are public works projects that are equally as important. And in prioritizing them, we must also include in that the quality of life issues that our citizens have come to expect, and not cut those when we start looking at prioritizing. So along with looking at other innovative funding sources, we should look at what the priorities are, but certainly not forget that our citizens want and deserve good quality libraries, good quality parks, as far as the total quality of life package that we can provide them. So it will be a prioritization of services that we have to look at. But again, there are ways that we can go about that without laying folks off.
Thank you, Mr. Chavez. Now we're going to Gary Barrington of Stockton's Connections magazine.
This is for Ms. Johnston. As one of the major issues in Stockton for the past year, and still ongoing a major issue, how would you resolve the controversy and the ongoing legal fight over the privatization of the operation of the city's clean water, sewage, and stormwater system, and how much will it cost?
Well, as you remember, Gary, I fought the water privatization from the first time it was brought up at the council level, believing that essential services such as police, fire, water, and sewer should remain under city control. And I supported the public's right to vote when the public came forward with an initiative to do that. And I support Judge McNatt's decision that the city acted improperly by not following the CEQA process. I believe the city should cut its losses, and the city should go ahead and return municipal control to Municipal Utility Department, get OMI Thames out of there, bring it back under city workforce, and not spend another dime of taxpayers' money fighting a legal battle that I predict we will lose.
Thank you, Ann. Mr. Chavez?
You know, this is another example where the city is in a position to look at the services they provide from a business perspective And when you look at the totality of the water sewer issue and privatizing out to MI Thames, there are an economy of scales in terms of the cost of upgrading, the mandated upgrades that were going to be required to the wastewater treatment. Now, this issue is in the courts, and I will tell you from experience that the ruling of one judge does not mean that that individual is infallible. The beauty of our system allows for appeals and to find out where it's going to end up.
Thank you, Ed. We're going to take a quick break. Mr. Barrington, can you please repeat the last question for Ralph White?
Well, the question was will you resolve the controversy on the ongoing legal fight over the privatization of the operation of the city's clean water, sewage, and stormwater systems, and how much will it cost?
One thing, you need to do the same thing as Schwarzenegger did when he went in office, and then repeal the whole thing. And he was appealing it. They was wrong in what they did in the first place. They had no business. Anytime that anyone comes before the council, you have to have EIR. Everybody know that. For everyone else, all the developers and everything else, the city didn't do it. I totally agree with the judge. You don't fire a shot, hit a piece of paper, and then draw the target around it. You're going to hit bullseye all day long. You dead center. And that's just what he said. He was 100% right. The council was dead wrong. I was very instrumental in the first time. She was sitting on council when I came up there and told her, you're going to end up in court, you're going to lose it. I think what you should do, since the people own this, it should be voted on by the people. Anything that we own, we should have enough sense and enough knowledge about it that we have a right to vote on whatever that we own before letting a handful of people sit up there and make some multi-million-dollar deal on a multi-million-dollar project. And there's two things you can do. One, you can get rid of oil, everything else can be replaced, but water is the most precious thing in the world. You'll never get rid of it. And you don't sell it.
Do any of the candidates have a response to Mr. White's? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Barrington, would you please ask another question?
This is for Mr. Chavez. As one of California's fastest growing cities, Stockton faces challenges ranging from strains on the infrastructure to improving the quality of life in our city. As mayor, how would you make Stockton growth smarter?
Well, hopefully we will involve ourselves in the general plan process that takes a close look at all the facets, not only growth, but the infrastructure, transportation, the infill. You know, I envision that Stockton will grow to some extent. Now, how far out we grow is the question, and how we provide for the services, the infrastructure, but we must also concentrate on the infill. Rehabilitating our existing older homes and creating housing on our vacant lots and taking some of the housing that's in existence and building new housing there. So it's a combination of some of the growth that we're going to experience, but also infill. Infill is extremely important. There will be some growth outside of our existing areas now, but again, keeping in mind that we have to have the community separators. But I also strongly endorse that we must have infill.
Thank you, Mr. Chavez. Ann Johnson, your response.
It's important that we grow wisely and in a managed fashion. And as I said in my opening comments, we need to be the leader in developing a regional plan for growth so that all the cities in this county will agree to a way of growing so that we don't grow together, so that we don't become that poster child of urban sprawl. And it's going to take leadership to do that. And it's important that Stockton, is the 800-pound gorilla, provide that leadership in this area. And if we can come to agreement, we will be able to retain our individual community identity and character, and we will prosper because of that. We will have infill, we will attract commerce, we will attract business and industry and residential areas. So providing leadership in determining our fate as a region is just as important as determining our fate as a city, because we are all interrelated, we're all part of the same valley, We all sink or swim together, and I would rather swim than sink.
Thank you, Ann. Mr. White, your response.
Yes, I think what we must all look at modern times and understand that the city is going to grow. It's up to the city council. Planning on a regional plan, however you plan, it's up to the city council. The buck stops at the council. The decisions is made at the council. We've been had general plans, they extend them every year. We've been having general plans ever since I went on the council in 1969. There was general plans then, and we never followed. The only little guideline we never followed. We're almost in the loadout right now. And with all the developers, he who pays the piper calls the tune. Watch the ones who get the big donations from the developers, and look how they have voted all along the line. They have jumped straight on across, because the developers own everything in that direction. But we need to go East Stockton and Southwest Stockton, Southeast Stockton. You'll be heading towards Linden and also towards Escalon. You're a long ways from that. But we do not need to go any further north. And I don't think anybody on this, up here on this button would say no more growth North Stockton but me. Let's do not go further than what we're at right now north. We got to go east and south, but we can't go any further north. That's just plenty. I don't think anybody else will say it, because I ain't got no money from none of the developers, so I can say it.
Thank you, Mr. White. Kevin Parrish at the record.
Okay. This question is for Ann. Your attitude about using public funds to help jumpstart the $100 million hotel arena ballpark project on the North Shore, and presuming you think it's a good plan, how would you proceed?
Kevin, can you use the microphone?
I'm sorry. Yeah.
You want to repeat
Could
it?
you repeat that question, please?
Sure. Oh, I'll repeat it. I'm asking Ann her attitude toward using public funds to help jumpstart the $100 million hotel/arena/ballpark project that's being proposed on the North Shore. And presuming that she likes the plan, or each of the candidates likes the plan, how would they proceed if not with the public funds?
Well, first of all, it's not just jump-starting the arena. It's almost fully funding the arena and the sports complex. And that's where I have a problem with the project as it's designed today. I support the concept of a downtown ballpark arena. I was on the council several years ago when we looked at a stadium for the Stockton Ports. It didn't pencil out financially at that time, even with a team that had a signed contract. It still needed general fund subsidy or your tax dollars to pay for it. Today, we have a mega project, $100 million of your tax monies and mine that are being proposed to go to this particular project. And I believe we have greater priorities in this community than an arena at this time, because we don't have teams that have signed to play in that arena. We don't have guaranteed sources of income to service the debt. We don't have a real plan for making sure that all of us taxpayers are not saddled and burdened with paying off this project. It will bankrupt the city in the future if we don't figure out this financial piece right now. So I would put it on hold and figure out all these pieces that have yet to be figured out before we go forward. In our city, we desperately need better police services. We need more libraries. We need park maintenance. We need a variety of things. We need to fix the potholes in our streets. We need to take care of all these infrastructure needs that have been waiting for years to be fixed. If this $100 million is in the city budget and free to spend, don't you think it would be smarter to spend it on the items that the public has continually asked the city to take care of, i.e. the streets, the libraries, the police stations, the parks, all of these day-to-day things that make your life and my life more bearable. I just think that we need to really evaluate this in light of the taxes that are being spent.
Thank you, Ann. Ralph White.
With 8.5 years on the council, the last 8.5 years, and we still have potholes? Nevertheless, we have over $300 million in the bank right now. City of Stockton, over $300+ million in the bank. We're not going to go bankrupt. But I don't think we should spend that money right now on no downtown ballpark. We don't get enough people at the ballpark where it's at right now. I mean, let's be real. Quit trying to sidestep something. We're going to bring all this downtown. You paint this beautiful picture of a downtown. But she ain't sitting and told you who all's involved in building those big big $200,000 apartments downtown, i.e. Spanos, what's that other big one contributing? Groupie. Those two has got the whole thing locked up right now. You understand? How do you do eminent domain on something, on some property, and you don't even have nothing, no, you haven't even done the EIR on that? You're still doing the same thing, gonna get right back in another lawsuit. Taking stuff away and haven't done that. And have you had one person on the council say anything about it? Oh no. He who pays the piper calls the tune. Keep that in mind. When I was on the council, I will guarantee you right now, no ballpark downtown unless you vote on it. If that's what you want, you get it. You gonna pay for it, you should have an opportunity to vote on something, $100-some million and that type of stuff. You should have an opportunity to vote on what, and a plan should be put there for you to look at, and you as the taxpayers is gonna pick up the tab, whether you like basketball, football, or whatever. But baseball, I don't think we get 1,000 people out there a week to watch that baseball team we have out there right now. And what we're going to do in the wintertime when they're not playing ball. Keep those things in mind when you get ready to waste people's money. Put it on the ballot. Chavez, let them vote for it.
Thank you, Ralph. Ed Chavez, your response.
You know, the long-term benefits of the arena, the ballpark, the hotel, conference center, I think would be very beneficial to this community. It is a hefty amount of money, and when you look at the funding, the financing plan, it includes a bond as well as redirecting interest on some of the monies. Now, having said that I support it, I've also come out publicly and said that we need to take it to the voters because it is a very, very big commitment, not only in funding it, but the ongoing support that will be needed for those facilities. If we do not have the support of the community, it will not be a success.
Thank you, Ed Chavez. Mr. Rodrigan of Levos.
Yeah, I have a question for Mr. White. I like your colorful style. Still, it's difficult for me to see a person like you get run out of the council. You're talking about being on the council is the answer. Why are you running for mayor? Why do you run for the council? Also, I would like to ask you...
I don't understand that question. Why are you running for mayor and not for councilman?
Because you said that the council is the answer to everything.
I know a lot about politics, so I'll correct you on that in a minute, so go ahead on.
Okay, the question is, what it would be your vision for the city? Because it seems like you don't agree with anything that you proposed so far. I would like to see what's your vision, because I have never had an opportunity to hear it.
Thank you, but I kind of feel something that I don't want to feel, so I'm going to straighten you out right now. I'm for whatever the people in Stockton, if it's going to cost them a certain amount of millions of dollars, if it's theirs, it belongs to them, they should have an opportunity to vote on it. Not me sit up there and make some deals with some of the big wheels that's working it around. I know a whole lot more about politics. I can write a couple of theses and get a PhD on politics right now because I know enough about it, all right? One thing about what Stockton needs, I'm in support of anything that is good for Stockton. And I'm in support of whatever the majority of the people is in support of. I am a leader. And I have enough sense to know what is being proposed right now of spending other people's money without giving them an opportunity to have a say is not democracy, and it's at its worst, not at its best. And I believe that people should have an opportunity to vote on anything that the city is going to invest in over $20 million. They should have a right to say yes or no. We can talk about bonds all you want to, but you're paying for the bonds. And that you know, it's tricking with words, you know, and the average person don't know it because they haven't been there. I'm not a reporter, but I have been in the administrative part of this city on the council. I was there for 16 and a half years. And I was darn good. And I know more about politics than anybody up here. I had 16 and a half years on the council. One had 8, the other one of them had none. I'm the leader.
Thank you, Mr. White. Mr. Barrington from Connections.
This is a question for Ms. Johnson. In your opening statement, you mentioned jobs. I mean, and to really, if you look at the history of Stockton, most of the jobs have been created in the past 5 to 6 years have been, you know, service-type jobs, minimum wage or just slightly above minimum wage. I mean, as mayor and working as a team with the city council, how would you go about creating jobs that are you know, quality jobs that actually are able to support families and within Stockton and San Joaquin County?
Well, as I stated in my opening statement, I believe it's important that we grow our local business, help local business expand, whether it's the banking industry, the insurance industry, contractors, all of these local businesses that make up the economic base of our community. We should help them expand and provide them incentives and not be a roadblock to their progress, because they are the job generators of our community. And if we turn our backs on our local businesses, we're shooting ourselves in the foot, because they're the ones who will grow those jobs. We should be encouraging new industry from outside, but we should not be encouraging the super Walmarts of the world that bring in the minimum wage jobs with no benefits or benefits that the employees cannot pay for. The employees still have to rely upon the public dole for health benefits. That's not acceptable. That's not the kind of jobs we want to encourage in this community. So we need, again, to focus on the type of industry that we want to recruit and provide the incentives, particularly in the downtown area and central Stockton, for them to locate here. With the foundation that we've laid in the downtown thus far and some added incentives, we should be able to attract the kind of higher paying jobs that will support our community and provide the jobs for all of you. But we have to look inside first, and we have to take care of our own to begin with.
Thank you, Ann. Mr. Chavez, your response.
You know, Stockton and the surrounding area are very appealing in terms of the housing market that we have, our schools, and there's no reason why we cannot work harder and obtain those opportunities to bring the businesses that our commuter residents are going to each and every day. Rather than have them leave early in the morning and come home late at night, how much better to have those jobs relocate here? And I think we're in a position where we can really entice a lot of these companies to locate here. So I would make that a priority.
Mr. White, your response.
Well, one is Walmarts, Kmarts, and any other the marks. I would be more than happy to have them come on in with all the jobs that they have to offer, because it would be bad for us to not have those type of jobs in this neighborhood when we would have to go to Sacramento or someplace else to shop at those places that we need here for our neighborhood and in our neighborhood. That's what the Walmarts and all those places are about. I understand that. But what I think that we need to do is try and entice more big companies, not only from the Bay Area, from back east and every place else. But let me tell you something that the rest of them haven't told you. That 8% tax is eating them up. Nobody wants to come to Stockton. I learned that when I was on the council, and it's been the same way ever since I left the council. All the big industries that were located here in Stockton, when they look at that 8%, to you it looks small. But when someone is paying $300,000, $400,000 a year, you have the corn factory out there is paying almost $1 million every 2 months in taxes to the city. You think they're going to bring in a lot of people? They want to relocate here when they can go right down to Modesto that's not charging anything. What happened to all our candidates we had? They left and went because the taxes was lower. We're charging too much. And that's what we're not willing. We have to break that tax down. I tried to put that on the ballot to bring it down, and I guarantee you, had it passed, you would have had a lot of jobs. You look at those same jobs in the Bay Area and those type of things, the taxes is much lower than it is in Stockton. That's the incentive, and I think that's what we have to work on. And as mayor, I would definitely try and get those taxes down, or try to figure out some kind of way that we can give a tax incentive or a break to those large companies that's hiring a large amount of people and that requires a lot of electric.
Thank you, Mr. White. Kevin Parrish from the record.
Okay. This is for Ed. Should Stockton have a permanent, full-time city attorney? Describe that position's ideal role within city government.
Yes, the city of Stockton should absolutely have a full-time city attorney. The role of the city attorney is to provide the legal advice to the mayor and council. That is the advising body on legal issues in order to effectively run this city. Now, I know we've had some difficulties in the past year or two relative to bringing on a full-time city attorney, but certainly that should be a priority of the council to ensure that we do have a full-time city attorney.
Mr. White?
I'm a full-time city attorney. I had a full-time city attorney the whole time I was on the council for 16 and a half years. There's no way in the world I'm going to pay a company to make recommendation to their own company. We've spent over millions of dollars with this one company right now. She was there when she came in here. We spent over $1 million already with this company with a part-time city attorney. We're paying more for a part-time head city attorney. Now remember, we got several other deputy city attorneys. But every time we need something, we have to hire another attorney anyway to represent us because either they're not equipped or they don't know what's going on or we don't know how to make them go into court. We use more attorneys and consultants than in any city of this size in the state of California. And we're second to none. So I would say that we need to, either we have an elected attorney that works for the people and not just for the council. Because the attorney tells you what you want to hear. That's why we've lost all the cases. Even the 4 or 5 I done beat them at.
Mrs. Johnson, your response.
A full-time city attorney is essential to the protection of the city of Stockton. We've not had a full-time city attorney. When elected mayor, that's the first act I will do is recruit for a full-time attorney because we don't get independent legal advice as it stands today. And Mr. White is correct. Our part-time city attorney funnels a lot of the legal business to her own firm in Oakland. So I would call that double dipping, if nothing else. We don't get the best legal advice because we go shopping for the legal advice that suits our purposes. We have a city manager that wants a certain thing to be done, and he sends out the marching orders, find me legal advice that permits this. And what has happened is we have gotten ourselves into court over and over and over again because we are getting bad, poor legal advice. And a city attorney is the only protection the city council has from that. They have to be independent. They have to have the welfare of the city first and foremost in their minds. And they have to say no sometimes to a council or to a manager when they want to do something that it is borderline or illegal or questionable or there hasn't been a lot of case law about it. So a city attorney full-time is critical.
Thank you, Mr. Rodrigon.
I'm familiar with the general plan, I've seen it, and it doesn't look like anything that is Stockton right now. I believe it was revised several times, and obviously it has to be revised with the times. Demography and other things change. Still, I see that under the freeway downtown and many other places, there is plenty of no man's land, which I know and understand that is too costly to recuperate because it has asbestos and some other problems. How can you respect a general plan that nobody pays attention to? And the question is for any of you.
Who is your question directed to?
You want to start?
Well, the general plan is a blueprint, a guide for the direction the city will be taking over the next, in this case, 20 and even out to 50 years. Now, general plans can certainly be amended, but the key is the process that goes into formulating those general plans. Is it inclusive? Does it address all the factors that a community must face over the next several years? And that's really, I believe, in my mind, the key to developing a good, effective general plan, one that takes into account the issues that you bring up, one that takes into account growth, one that takes into account potential pollution generated by the growth, the infrastructure, the infill issues. So it has to be a viable, workable process that ends up being a good plan.
We all know the general plan does become a, quote, political plan, because there's always the attempts to change the general plan, to amend things, to include things that are outside of the boundaries of the general plan. It really becomes a political issue, and the ability of the general plan to be a true blueprint really resides with the elected officials. The city council and the mayor have to be strong, have to be determined, and resist the pressure to make changes that are not in the best interests of the community. That sometimes is very hard for past councils to do, probably present councils as well. The important thing is to recognize that that pressure is constant to change the general plan, and to have elected leaders who have common sense and the backbone to say no when it makes no sense, because that's the only way we can preserve the quality of life and the growth that we will experience.
Mr. White.
You know, it sounds fantastic when you listen to people explain to you how it all works and all that process and how it goes, but they vote with the developers every time they want to move it. It's fantastic, and it's easy to mislead you, but as mayor, that's why I haven't taken a dime from no developer, and I have no intentions on doing it, because he who pays the piper calls the tune. They have made the council jump around general plans. The whole time I was on the council, I watched it. A lot of times I was able to stop it because I come from a district, and I love to hear the chief say things about infrastructure and all that. We don't have 1,500 vacant lots in the city of Stockton, as large as it is right now, if we need, and we process over almost 5,000 houses. There's no way we could do it in a year. We don't even have 1,500 single lots in Stockton. I bet you we don't have 1,000 the way the interest of the people are building right now. There's not 1,000 vacant houses, vacant lots in the city, so we can forget about that. The general plans have to have leadership. Forget about the general plan. General plans is something, let me tell you, it's a mandate. We have to have a general plan. That's mandated by the state and the feds. So it's not something that we don't have to have. Every city has to have a general plan. Now, how do you amend it? You have the authority to do that, but you still have a general plan. What we also have is what you call a 5-year plan. But every year, we extend it another year. So we keep 5-year plan all the way out, and it never pick up South Stockton or East Stockton or Southeast Stockton or East Stockton itself. It strictly goes north because that's where everybody done bought up all that land years ago. So now what we have to do is stop the building past 8 Mile Road. 8 miles is far enough from City Hall. Come back and go east, build as far as east, 8 miles east, 8 miles southeast. Now we got the center core of our city. Why have a heart and your body, your whole body done moved away from the heart, from your heart. And I mean, you're not growing, your legs are not growing because it can't go no further south. So all it is now is your heart sitting here and your body is going on up, leaving it. So you don't have a center. But if you move and spread out east and west and more southeast and east, now you put everything in, then you have everybody coming downtown. But right now, why should they go up downtown when everything you have is out north? All your new homes is out north. You don't have a choice to rent no apartment downtown in East Stockton. There's no apartments. Look at the houses, the apartments that Spanish just put out in his area. Don't you think we would like to have those in East Stockton and in South Stockton and in West Stockton? We had those. That now you center core your people. Right now, those of you that live out north know how hard it is to get home in the evening at 4 o'clock, from 4 o'clock to 6 o'clock. It's getting tough on that freeway, getting home on I-5 or 99. So if you stay, that's why Lakewood is growing so fast. It's because it's a short distance. That's why Western Ranch is growing so fast, because they don't have to make that trip out north. So we have to do some controlled growth. And we have to say that as council members. And as mayor, I know how to say no, because I don't owe nobody nothing.
Thank you,
The
Mr.
developers, I'm not in their pocket.
Thank you. Mr. Barrington of Connections.
This is a question for Mr. Chavez. Recently, the San Joaquin County District Attorney's Office went on record as being dissatisfied with the Stockton Police Department's 5-year rotation plan, saying it hinders homicide prosecutions. Can you explain that plan and explain, as mayor, how you would deal with San Joaquin County District Attorney's Office?
Well, first of all, I would not interject myself into operation issues in any department. And the matter you're talking about is an operational issue. It's not a policy issue. The reason why personnel in the Stockton Police Department are rotated from assignment to assignment is that we found that if you leave certain personnel in specific assignments too long, that they lose track of the notion that we are all subject to being in uniform. A police officer, every one of us, regardless of rank or assignment, is subject to being in uniform. The value we see in rotating homicide investigators back to uniform is that they can then train our younger officers in homicide investigations, crime scene investigations, and we end up with a better, well-rounded department, as opposed to leaving a handful of individuals, 2 or 3 or 4 or 5, in one assignment for extended amounts of time. So that is the reason why we rotate people through a variety of assignments, whether it's homicide, whether it's narcotics, whether it's motorcycles, what have you. But again, I go back to that's an operational issue, best handled by the chief of police.
Would any of the candidates like to add a response to that?
I would. I'm afraid I would get involved in operational issues at the police department, because I think as mayor you need to be aware of what's going on in your departments, and if there are operational issues that are causing problems with other police agencies, you better figure out what they are and try and solve them. When I was on the school board, there was a philosophy at that time that principals should only serve for 5 years in a school because, again, they needed to be, quote, rotated, so they got experience in all the schools in the district. That didn't really benefit the students in those schools in the district. It simply gave the administration the ability to move people around pretty freely at will. They changed that and allowed principals to stay for like 8 years or 9 years at a school site. And the results were amazing because the roots and the connections that those managers had with their students and their parents far outweighed any benefit that might have occurred had they been moved sooner. Sometimes it takes a while to get your legs on the ground, figure out the lay of the land, and know what you can do to make things better. So I would question this, much like the district attorney does, and would need far more information, but I would get involved in operational issues.
Mr. White, would you like to add a comment?
One thing, I totally disagree with the chief on that, because that's why you're a city father, and the responsibility is on us to make sure that everything is right, not on an employee to make sure that his boss don't have nothing to do with his department. That's wrong. The city father have something to say about every department, just as you have something to say about every room in your house if you're paying the bills. Now, we're putting that responsibility to make sure that everything run right. The first thing I would do is take issue with that. Number one is if a person worked their way up to a detective, they've got a lot of experience, they will stay there until they retire. Because right now we have the highest unsolved crimes or murders than any city of this side in the state of California. And the chief, I beg you to tell me the difference. And that's what you have to do, and that's because you're rotating down. You don't make a sergeant and then put him back in the field and don't put him in charge of nobody. That's why he worked his way and stayed there long enough to be a sergeant. He has all that experience. You don't throw that experience and put it back in a uniform. You keep that experience and you teach the other ones that's coming up, because everybody make it there is going to retire. So what, you going to have a bunch of retired investigators? Everybody in the police department is an investigator.
Thank you, Mr. White. We're now going to turn to audience questions that we handed out a piece of paper at the beginning with questions from each of you, and we had some people sift through them, and I'm going to ask them.
And then you can come back in as well.
Okay, this is to all the candidates. Community separators were mentioned earlier, but what would you do to preserve the best farmland in the world? Did that question make sense? No. Community separators were mentioned earlier, but what would you do to preserve the best farmland in the world, being the San Joaquin Valley? I would start with Ann.
I'll take it on. You would provide the basis for land trust to purchase that land, to save that land. You would work with the farmers to keep that land in agriculture in perpetuity. You would make sure that it is not able to be developed by developing those land trusts. And we have lots of folks out there who know how to do that. Basically, you would buy the land and keep it in trust for agriculture. But first, you'd have to identify that prime ag land and make sure that what you're saving is worth saving and that it is valuable for agriculture production. And I think that's where the community dialogue comes in, and sitting down with the farmers and sitting down with the citizens and developing a plan on where that is and how that should be put together. That's the challenge we face in this community.
Thank you, Mrs.
First thing you have to do is do what everybody else is running around with the sign on the car saying, just say no to drugs, just say no to the developers. You can't build no further than here. This is the line. Just learn how to say no. That's it. It ain't no we got to save this and we should save that. We know what the economy is in this community and how bad and how much land we're using and which way we're going. At least as leaders, we should know. I do know. If I'm elected as mayor, I would say no. We're not going to build in certain areas any further now because of these certain type of things. That has to be protected. Other than that, the whole state of California, one of the prime land in the United States, will be ate up with houses. And then what are we going to do? I guess attack another country.
Thank you, Mr. White. Mr. Chavez, your response, please.
You know, I think we all endorse the notion of community separators. It's how we go about maintaining those. And when you talk to some farmers, they indicate that they are not making money off their land, and that's a resource to them. So in order to maintain those, there are a variety of options. One, you can buy the land and prohibit building. Another is you can enter into long-term ag lease agreements. But there are some methods out there to ensure that we maintain those agricultural lands surrounding our community.
Thank you. Next question I'm also going to direct to Ed Chavez, but each of you will have a response. What is your position on implementing and installing a citizens review committee to review police performance? Why has one not been installed before?
You know, in 1993, we went through a very difficult period in the Stockton Police Department and the city where we had a citizen police officer killed. At that time, there was a call for a citizen review board. Also at that time, I supported the notion that the council assume that responsibility, and I still do to this day.
Thank you. Mrs. Johnson?
I would take a more proactive approach. I would form a community policing task force that would be made up of residents, representatives of ethnic groups in the different neighborhoods, the police, elected officials, to sit down and talk about the issues that are out there that need to be solved, the problems that we're experiencing, and come forward with recommendations to the council to make changes, to implement solutions, so that we're not faced with having to have a police review board because of difficulties with the police department and how they handle citizens. So to me, it's important that we have, again, a task force with the authority to make recommendations to the council for changes within the department, for changes within the community that would prevent the kinds of difficult situations that we have seen in Stockton.
Mr. White, your response?
Stockton is no different from no other city. The buck stops at the council level. That's why you elect us. Those of us that have served in office and don't know the power that we have should take another look at it. As mayor, I would do the same thing. I was a councilman for 16 and a half years. There was only one person killed, one citizen, one of the taxpayers, the bosses, which is the boss of every employee that works for the city of Stockton. You are the boss of all city employees. But the city employees act as if they're the boss over you. You're the government. You own your government, not your government own you. And what have happened here, and I have to look at the chief and look at his record. There's been more citizens killed under his administration than any chief we ever had in the city of Stockton. More people have been killed, and especially minorities, under his administration than any chief we ever had. You have to say no. A review board, and let me explain to you something that you don't know, and the rest of them, and she should have known. The council has that authority itself because we are the city fathers and mothers that serve there. We have a right to question any killing in the city. I made that statement when I came on the council that I would look at every council. I would ask the council, because it's in our charter that we have that power. I would ask the council to look into any shooting and every shooting. We had one shooting, and that was when one of the policemen, he's no longer a policeman because I don't play that stuff, he had to go. And the chief will tell you that. He worked with him. But one person was killed while I was a councilman for 16 and a half years. That should tell you something. That's leadership, because nobody wants to be questioned about those killings. One policeman was killed, but that policeman that he's talking about that was killed, the bullet might have been killed by one of their own officers. It was a crossfire.
Thank you, Mr.
I
White.
will take exception to that last statement, by the way.
That's all right.
That's not what occurred.
You're talking about the one over there on the west side of it.
Thank you, Mr. White. Would you like to add any response to that, Mr. Chavez?
I just told you I took exception to that last comment. Okay. That's not what occurred.
I'm going to direct this question to Ralph White, and then the others will have a chance to respond. What do you consider the most important environmental issue facing Stockton? How will you address those issues as mayor?
Well, one is quite naturally the valley have the largest polluted area right now because of the way the government have set things through the state, in which they are changing that now. We used to get everything, and our standards was much different than it was in the Bay Area. In the Bay Area, everything's come over the mountain and sit in the valley. So therefore, that's how we was getting caught up, or with everything falling and sitting in the valley, and because of the smog, it couldn't lift. And we would breathe it all, and that's why we have the highest asthmatic people area in the state of California in this valley, in San Joaquin Valley. What I would do is make sure that the feds and the state would pump more money into this area that could put up some type of, with all this technology we have, if we can go to Mars and run around, I'm sure we can come up with something that can suck up all this pollution that we have and put them in different parts of our valley to bring it in and filter our air. That is the main thing we would have to do. And then we'll have to get involved with people that have all the experience and expertise in the environmental and our ozone and all that type of stuff. And we have to sit down and be willing to work with them and not sit back and find an excuse not to dump the money where it needs to be.
Thank you, Mr. White. Mrs. Johnson, your response?
Yes, air pollution is one of the major concerns, as well as water pollution. We need to enforce the rules and the regulations that are on the books today to make sure that industry and residents don't pollute our waterways, don't contribute to the air pollution that we experience, because the health of our community depends upon it. It's important that we provide leadership in that. And the city of Stockton, of course, has difficulties right now with the Water Resources Board in terms of what we put into the river from our sewer plant. We need to be leaders in preventing the pollution that exists, but we have to also lead the solution to the problem, and getting together with the environmentalists, with the regulators, with the citizens, and identifying how we can fix the problems with that federal money, with that state money, and some local money will make the difference. But there are definitely problems that we have to resolve for our health and for our safety.
Thank you, Mr. Chavez.
I agree that pollution is probably the foremost environmental issue that we're facing and will be facing. You know, as we look at this community growing, not necessarily outwardly, but within our own community, the issue of pollution is going to be paramount. The amount of traveling that we do, we all get in our own cars, one person to each car. So some of the long-term strategies that we should have and should be working on or alternatives to that, whether it's light rail, whether it's an enhanced transportation system with buses or creating loops around the city. But you know, we need to come up with strategies that will certainly involve more funding that the city of Stockton can provide, we'll have to include the state and the federal government. But again, pollution and the alternatives that we need to be looking at long term.
And Mr. Chavez, the next question is also directed towards you. Do you support water privatization? And since you called for a vote on the downtown sports complex development, do you also support such a vote on water privatization?
I believe that the council took the appropriate action relative to the privatization issue. Certainly, the issue that should have been addressed was the CEQA issue. Now, the CEQA, you know, history shows us that whenever you enter into operation and maintenance agreements, CEQAs are not required. It's when you start doing facilities, planning, and so forth. So, hindsight's 2020. The CEQA should have been done. And again, that issue will be in the courts for a while now.
I supported the citizens' right to vote on the water privatization, just like the right to vote on the sports arena and any other project that requires significant amounts of taxpayer money. It's essential that taxpayers have a say in how their monies are spent when the city embarks upon new, untried, unproven projects that, in fact, will affect the life and the health of its citizens. So I would obviously support a vote.
Mr. White, do you have any?
That's why the city council was divided in the first place. But, you know, we have to be honest. You know, the mayor keeps 3 votes at all time, and his is the 4th. And he's always ran things the way he wanted to run. And y'all know that. I mean, it's nothing new. So when the OMI wanted to take it over and the deal was made, we have to sometimes look at who lives next to who over in Santa Cruz. Who owns what land next to who over in Santa Cruz, and what they own and what position they hold in our city. You've been hogwashed. Nobody wants to tell you the truth. They try to lay it down, and you don't know it. Not even your newspaper. They won't tell you everything, and they're not telling you the truth, because we gave them a city block downtown. $1 million worth of land we gave them downtown almost, and condemned everything. Cost $3 or $4 million to do that. She know what I'm talking about. But you see, what I'm trying to tell y'all is that water, I'm for people making that decision, because one thing you have to understand, when you run out of oil, you can do without taking a bath in oil. You can do without drinking oil. You can do without drinking gold. Maybe you melt it down and can drink it. You can do without it, but you cannot do without drinking water. And you cannot do without taking a bath with water. That is the most prime thing right now, all over the United States right now. Water is more important than gold. Go up to Sacramento and ask them. That's why they don't want you to pollute it. They don't want nothing, all that stuff in it, because it is very important right now. And it's very expensive. And if we own our own system, eventually we will be selling to other cities around the state of California. All we have to do is improve it. And we have enough money to do it. We don't need OMI. You got $300 million drawn, I don't know how much interest in the bank per year. We can spend some of that money.
Right.
It's ours. Am I right or wrong?
Absolutely right.
Thank you.
The following question is for Mr. White. You say you haven't taken money from developers, but how do we know? You haven't filed any campaign finance disclosure reports with the city, have you?
You don't have to file until you spend $1,000. I will be filing one because I've spent over $1,000, but it's my own money. I have not taken it because I know how it works. I was there for 16 and a half years. I've watched it. I know how it works. And that's not only on the council, it's every place else. And you get used in that process. Some people want to get there for one and other reasons, whatever they are. That's why they said Mr. White is so colorful and all that kind of stuff. Sure, I understand it. I was called colored for years. But the way that I say things might not be as colorful as people might think they are, because I'm more serious about what I'm saying, and I'm independent enough to say what I want to say and tell you the truth, because I don't have to worry about when I get outdoors who's going to cut back on that little money they gave me last year, or who's going to not give me no money and go call somebody else and cut that money out for next year when I get ready to run for re-election or run for something else. And that's in any politics. He who pays the piper I'll say it 100 times, calls the tune. I be darned if I'm gonna pay somebody to play some records, they gonna play what they want to play with my money. They gonna play what I tell them to play. And that's what happened with your developers. They control this council, they always have. The firemen and the chief, and the police is 80%, almost 80% of your budget. They got the best retirement in the world. Chief get over $100,000 a year in his retirement. Now he want to get $60,000 from you to work for you again. I'll work for you for free. Ask the chief if he'll do it.
Thank you, Mr. White. The next question is directed to Ed Chavez.
$15 a week when I was on the council.
Ed Chavez, how do you feel about the privatization of the trash pickup in respect to the fees going up from approximately $4 per month to $18 per month?
You know, I would certainly go into that with caution in terms of the cost to our citizens. Again, if it's an issue of privatizing some services and it makes good business sense, okay, without a serious impact to our residents, then I would certainly endorse looking at it. But if we're going to just continue raising the fees to our users, then I don't support it.
The fact is, the garbage collection has been privatized for years. We have private companies that own the franchises that pick up the garbage. What is new is this 3-tote system that requires recycling, and that system is going into effect June 1st or July 1st of this year. And that's what's causing an increase in rates. And the council approved, when I was not on the council, the council approved this whole system of collection and the fees attached to it, despite protests, particularly from senior citizens and members of the concerned citizens who said there hadn't been adequate information regarding the fee hikes. I know I'm hearing from a variety of seniors, particularly in our community, that they're not going to be able to afford this increase in garbage pickup rates because they didn't need all this service that now is being forced upon them. The city needs to evaluate once again how we're going to do this in terms of fairness throughout our community. Now, I support the idea of the 3-can or the 3-tote system because the city of Stockton needs to recycle. We need to remove 50% of our waste from the landfill. We're barely reaching 40% today, and we will be fined by the state if we don't reach that. However, we only have to look north to the city of Lodi, who has been recycling with the 3-tote system for over 15 years, keeping their rates down and actually recycling way over 50% in the last 15 years. We don't have to go far to find an example of good recycling at an economical price. So the council needs to look again at this program before it's implemented to make sure that everything is fair and appropriate and accomplishes the original intent, the original goal of that program.
Mr. White.
I would have to say the same thing as your governor said when he was running. I would repeal it. If I become mayor, I would make sure that that doesn't happen. I do not support it, and it will not happen. I was told this when I was on the council before Lodi set up there. The state was making that a mandate back then, over 20-some years ago. The state made that part of a mandate. We supposed to have been doing that 20-some years ago. The thing is you have to look at is who owned the 2 garbage companies. And whatever price they sit on you, you're going to pay it. Because they'd have set up something else right now that I'm still thinking about filing a lawsuit, but if I'm the mayor, I don't have to file that lawsuit for you. At least I saved everybody, got a cell phone right now in your pocket. Raise your hand, because I'm the one that saved you that tax money, so you're not being taxed on that. That come from me. I won that lawsuit, so they can't tax you on your cell phone. Thanks to me, before I become mayor. But when I become mayor, I'm not only going to save you that, I'm going to tell you right now, they have you locked in. If you don't pay your water bill, they're going to cut your water off. But if you don't pay your sewage bill, they're going to cut your water off. If you don't pay your garbage bills, they're going to cut your water off. All 3 of them are privately owned. We don't own, but we own one of them now since the judge done gave back to us, and we darn sure would be a fool to get rid of it. But I'm saying to you again, you should not lock all three of them in the way they have sitting up on the council, because it's totally illegal. If you don't pay Sears and your old Wards and your old Dillards, now Sears said, well, if you don't pay Dillards and Wallets, you can't buy nothing there from me. Oh, no way. You keep your credit card. Forget their credit card. You don't want to pay them, pay me. So that's what has happened now. They done lock you in now, and they're making you pay your water bill. And the water company has nothing to do with the city of Stockton. It has its own private company. It's owned by California Water, which happens to be one of the board members, I think he's the chairman, I'm not sure, that owns the property next to the mayor in Santa Cruz. So you have to understand how we're locked in. So I'm saying to you, look into it. You have to start doing something as taxpayers and not just sit back and let the government own you. You own the government, not the government own you. So you're going to have to make that changeover and just start coming and getting involved and choose the right person. I don't care how colorful they might be or what gender they might be. You choose the right person that has enough sense and enough courage to say no. And I can say no, and I guarantee you, you won't get taxed one more dime, and I'm going to pull that 8% off of you some kind of way if I'm mayor.
Thank you, Mr. White. We're going to go down to closing comments, starting off with Ed Chavez.
Well, thank you for the opportunity to come before you this evening. As you can all tell, there are a lot of issues that need to be addressed, a lot of opportunities in our community. And I think the one common factor that all of us have is that we want to do what's best for our community. And so certainly, if given the opportunity, I look forward to providing a vision for this city, to leading this city, and to creating an exciting downtown, vibrant neighborhoods. So again, thank you very much for the opportunity.
Mrs. Johnson.
Thank you. Stockton is the 12th largest city in California, and as such demands experience and leadership in the mayor's office. As a business owner, I've been in business over 22 years. I know how to save pennies and maximize the dollars. As a former school board member, I know the challenges that face our school systems and believe we can work together to solve the problems that our children face in this community. As a former council member, I was a leader in bringing about positive change in the city over the last 10 years, and my work is not finished. January of next year, 2005, will see new faces on the city council, 3 new council members and a new mayor. We have the opportunity to do great things, but we must have some continuity in leadership. I can provide that continuity. I was there in the beginning, worked through the process. I know where we were, where we've been going, and where we need to go to make Stockton the place we want to be. I'd like to share with you my vision for what Stockton will look like when I leave the mayor's office in 2014. I see a thriving downtown with the waterfront attracting tourists and residents alike. I see good-paying jobs that keep our children in this community. I see Stockton as a model for balanced and responsible growth and an example of how communities operate that care about themselves. I see schools that are not only the centers of learning, but centers of neighborhood activity and involvement. I see that the city will have safe neighborhoods throughout our community, not just in certain areas, and that neighbors and police will be working together to prevent crime. I see a city where citizens are proud to say, I live in Stockton, an all-America city. I hope to be your next mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Johnson. Ralph White, your closing comments, please.
Thank you. I, too, have to agree with almost everything she said. And if I'm elected, I will guarantee you that I will do everything that she had proposed to do that was good. But the most important thing, and one thing we have to keep in mind, is what she said, and what the less experienced politician up here said a few minutes ago. Moved from him to her, and she said, experience count. She told you about 8 years. I had 16 and a half years, okay, on the council. So if experience count, I'm that experienced person. So if we look at what happened when I was on the council for the time that I was there, taxes was only raised 2 times in 16 and a half years that I served on that council. And the one time, because we needed more policemen, at that time the city was growing fast and we didn't have enough policemen, and we added 2% on at that time. That was, and then when I first came on the council, the first time, the last time, and the other time, we kept it down because we had a council and I was there the whole time. A whole lot of councilmen came and left while I served, but I served for 16 and a half years and watched the turnover in every councilman district around me. So I was a lone sitting councilman there, and that was because I was able to work with the other councilmen and make sure that the taxes stayed down. Now, if that's what you want, someone will hold down the taxes, I'm your person. If you want someone that's going to do something for everybody in this city, irregardless of where you live or how much money you have, I'm your person. I'm that person that can bring about the leadership that we have. If you want someone that's going to protect your purse and your wallet, then I'm that person. I know what the city needs. I'm not afraid to put the votes together. I have the whole time I was on the council. I could put 5 votes together, not 3. 3 is easy to put together, but putting 5 together, I could put 5 together anytime I wanted. I was the most independent councilman that served on that council the whole time I served, and the Stockton Record can attest to that, and they're good at going looking up your history on you know, because they got it right down on everything. I was the best. And I think and I know what this city needs right now. I'm not looking for 20 years from now. I'm looking to make sure that everything is right now, and as we grow, we look towards the future and we work towards the future. But we must maintain the present right now. And we're going to have to keep everything down low because, as a young man said a few minutes ago, and she said too, you have all these low-paying jobs. They can't afford all these increases that we're putting on them. They cannot afford it because it goes from $7 an hour or $6 an hour to them. By the time you put all these other new added on garbage cans and different stuff and all this new water prices and all this rate, theirs keep dropping down and down, and you keep getting salaries. You see, the city of Stockton don't own anything that we make money out of but off of you. So therefore, when everybody needs a raise, they have to go up on something to offset those big raises. You have to understand, and the chief understand what I say, he made more money than the governor of the state of California. And when he was the chief, you think I'm lying, he'll tell you. But anyway, you have to understand in this city, we're overpaying our top level people. Somewhere we have to say enough is enough. We got to stop the raises at the top, because when the bottom get 3% raise and the top get 10% raise, 10% on $150,000, $15,000. 3% on $25,000 a year is not a whole lot of money. I mean, you better start thinking about it. So that's what we have to do, is seal the top and start maintaining our city and make it work right. We got to get a city attorney that is elected by the people. We got to get a city clerk that is elected by the people, because those people don't work for you. They work for the council. But you pay them. So you should elect those 2 positions. And then we work on electing the chief. Because as long as the chief is appointed, he's working at the pleasure of the manager's working at the pleasure of the councilor, and the manager works at the pleasure of whoever have those 3 other votes to go with the 4th vote. And believe me, that's why everything's been controlled. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. White. I'd like to thank our panelists tonight and also the candidates for coming. This is a really neat event. It was a really good experience for all the students. I'd like to give a round of applause for the students who put this together also. Once again, if you weren't here before, this is sponsored by Pipeline. It's a nonpartisan political club here on campus, and we're devoted to getting students and community members interested in political events just like this.